Automotive Logistics Russia 2015. Before we start, the conference will be the presentations, the questions and the discussions could be in English or Russian. So if you need a translation headset for the simultaneous translation, they're available just outside, so you might want to collect some translation headsets. My name is Yiakoumi. I'm a founder and publisher of the Automotive Logistics Group. It's great to see a gathering of people like this who, like us, believe in and continue to invest in Russia, even in these interesting times. In my research, I've been amazed at the strength and resilience of the Russian people. The attitude almost seems to be, we call this a crisis. I think you seem to be used to having a crisis in the automotive and logistics world in Russia. And the thing about logistics is that when times are good, you're very busy trying to make sure the parts and the vehicles flow through the system and keep up with the demand. And when business is not so good, life in logistics is still very busy as you try to become more efficient and still match the capacity with demand. And at this conference, we will find out what you are doing differently, what your peers and counterparts at other companies are doing differently to ensure the current and future success of your companies. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors for their support, not just for the conference, but for the industry. Our gold sponsors, Cherekaev, our global sponsors, CTM Law, and Logistics. They are all global sponsors because they actually sponsor all of our conferences around the world. And our silver sponsors, Adampol Vectura, Alpha Usluga, BLG Logistics, Finlines, and HWC International. Automotive Logistics Russia is also part of our Automotive Logistics Live application. Details of which you can see on the front cover of the printed program or on the inside back cover of the program. It's worth logging on to because we'll be using this app, the conference is being streamed live and recorded so you can see the sessions later at your leisure. But now you can also use the conference app to ask questions or to make comments, to see the questions and comments from others. You can send direct messages to other attendees at the conference, and you can take part in the audience polling and voting that we'll carry out during the day. So we hope that everyone here will be able to share information, discuss solutions, and build the contacts that will help you all become stronger and better prepared for the great future in Russia that is surely ahead. Been very fortunate in putting together a great panel to start off the conference for 2015. Representing different aspects, we've got analysts giving some ideas and forecast, a vehicle maker, a government authority, and an expert on automotive and world trade issues. So we'll be hearing different aspects of the things that will impact on your industry over the next couple of years. So I'd like to welcome to the stage to open the conference for 2015, Sergey Litvinenko, the Director of Automotive Advisory Systems for PwC. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, I'm pleased to welcome you here, pleased to be invited to this conference.
результаты.
I'm purely automotive guy, so I'll be sharing, perspectives and forecasts with respect to automotive market, and we can further discuss how these may have an impact on logistics and so on. So, as you may already know, Russian car market this year is experiencing certain, fluctuation, and we expect to see significant drop in sales for new cars. We are normally as PwC focusing on passenger cars, but this trend is also applicable to LCV to a certain extent. And within my presentation, I will be focusing on new vehicles, on new passenger vehicles. So over here, we've presented 2014 year results by months, and also 2015. As you can see, from January to May 2015, we have seen a drop, which was speeding, and we now see that in May the drop reached 41% compared to same months of previous year. Well, this is quite a substantial drop, and of course it may have an impact on all the businesses around, and of course automotive industry in particular. But what is also important is to see and understand what will be in the next months, and of course in the following years. And from this perspective, it is very important to analyze what was the development of the market in 2014. As you can see, there could be, indicated 3 stages in 2014 when the market was at first, demonstrating results around zero growth, so it was close to nil, and afterwards, in second and third quarters of 2014, there was a significant drop in the market, and drop reached about 26%, which we have seen in August. That was kind of a bottom for previous year, and of course now we are coming to the second, to the third quarter, to the end of the year, and it will have an impact as a base for results that we will forecast, we will see in 2015. So. And you also can see that in the fourth quarter, the market speed up, and there was an extraordinary situation when depreciation of ruble, occurred, and of course that had an impact on consumers who were trying, to buy cars not at high prices, which were, very expected at the moment when ruble depreciated. And also we have seen lots of customers and customers who were buying cars from, not only from Russia, but also from Belarus, from Kazakhstan, coming to Russia as a result of ruble depreciation. And this leads us to conclusion that the fourth quarter of this year, as a result of high base, will be quite difficult for the market, despite the fact that we have seen right now a certain slowdown of, I would say, drop rates. From perspective of monthly sales, we will see that the drop will not be that crucial in the coming months. So we will see better numbers than currently, but I expect quite a difficult fourth quarter for this year. What is important is trying to understand how these recent market development and negative development will impact the interest and the intensity of business from major OEMs who have already invested in Russia or who are doing business in Russia. This table was prepared based on 2014 numbers. Of course, it will be changing a bit based on 2015 numbers, but the idea is that certain OEMs have already invested quite significant amounts of money into business in Russia, and we believe that these companies, except for very specific case of GM, they will continue doing business in Russia, and clearly they see this as Russia is an important market for them. GM is a special case, and I will later tell why I believe so. But as you can see, most of the OEMs, they have their own production facilities over here in Russia. This recent drop in sales was not only a negative factor for OEMs, but also some of the OEMs, some of the brands, some of the importers, they considered this as an opportunity to increase their market share. And if you compare market shares of certain brands in 2014 and 2015, we can see that some brands, they have benefited from this situation and managed to increase the share. Of course, in most cases, all the brands experienced a drop in sales, in volumes, but market share is also very important for them. So as you can see, mostly Korean brands and Russian brands, of course, as a result of ruble depreciation, are in a better position, to withstand this negative development of the market and even benefit from it. And of course, some of the premium brands, traditionally, they're also trying to, benefit from this. Though it's very important, I will tell this later, that foreign brand or premium brands, they experiencing this certain change in the strategy, because as you remember, in recent years premium brands mostly benefited from the fact that they introduced smaller, more compact models at lower price segments, competing with I would say high price medium segment cars. While in this year we see the trend that premium brands are now more focusing on more expensive cars on this segment, which was less damaged by recent drop in sales and recent, I would say, not stable situation in the economy. As you already, of course, all know, one of the major factors that had an influence on the market development was, of course, ruble depreciation. And what is also important, that in this year we already see some controversial dynamics of ruble, and we have seen already certain even appreciation of ruble in recent months, and it looks like the ruble is stabilizing at the level of 50 to 60 rubles per US dollar, and that's maybe that could be quite of long-term or even mid-term, level of the ruble in in the following months at least. And we see that the fact that the ruble appreciated since, for example, the beginning of the year, it allowed also some of the OEMs and brands introduce certain discounts, rebates for the cars, and that supported the market, for example, in April and in May. And that was very important, and it looks like that, and I will show this later, that the brands are choosing different strategies. Some of them were increasing prices slowly, gradually, and in this case we still may see certain increase in car prices, and that of course will have a negative impact on sales of these brands. While other brands, they have increased prices at immediately at quite significant amount, and they experienced, of course, significant drop in sales, and now we see that they're introducing better prices, new discount programs, and now they are now getting better position in the market. With respect to macroeconomic situation, of course, this is one of the key factors that is in minds of investors and all the companies working here in Russia. Over here in this slide, we've presented just a summary of macroeconomic indicators, and we see that the forecast for 2015 and 2016 a bit different. So, official government bodies, they expect certain growth of GDP in 2016. This might happen, but this, of course, will highly depend on further development of all these geopolitical situations. But fundamentally, the market and the economy are ready, to grow from this quite a low base that we will see this year. So inflation is stabilizing and expected to be the level of 7% in 2016, while this year, of course, considering speed up inflation in early of the year, we will most likely see inflation around 12%. That's official numbers. And of course, as always, still the development of the economy will highly depend on oil prices, and Russian government is forecasting many of its macroeconomic indicators based on the assumption that the oil prices will be around 70 US dollars per barrel, and that most likely will not change very significantly. We should not expect very significant growth in that respect. And that, of course, will have an impact on the market, and I will show later how. I will not stay long on these I would say factors that has an influence on the market. Of course, there are many of them, and one of the key of them is clearly the support that Russian government introduced this year. These programs supporting demand for new cars. These programs relate to utilization, also trade-in, and subsidized loans. And one that was very recent, also leasing for individuals. That's all these initiatives, and also many others actually. The government is extending its purchases to support local producers, introducing better initiatives to stimulate export, and all this is supporting the market. But what is also important, that considering the fundamental, I would say, drop in real disposable income of customers, these measures, they are really helping, but the extent to which they are having positive impact on the market is much less than we have seen in previous years. And that also is one of the new things compared to the crisis problems that the market experienced in 2011, when the market dropped almost by 50%. As a demonstration of the fact that different OEMs, different brands are choosing different strategies in terms of the marketing in the Russian market, we have seen, it's a bit complicated chart, but it says that some of the brands initially increased prices by almost like 50%, as Opel and Chevrolet, for example, the brands which are diminishing their operations here in Russia. But afterwards, of course, as a part of the also, I would say, sale program, they have introduced decrease of prices. Some other brands that continue working in Russia, they still, some of them decreasing prices, and you can see that there is some kind of a trend in terms of a country of origin of those OEMs, of those brands, and that is a result of a ruble depreciation towards currencies, in major currencies for those brands, for those OEMs. And some brands are still increasing prices, and that is a result of a more conservative strategy of price increases. Well, in terms of government support, as I mentioned already, support is quite significant. The government initiated almost most of the anticipated programs. And that was clearly very important, because it also was kind of a message to the market that the government continues to see automotive industry is an important. So I believe that still some of the steps could be undertaken and some measures still could be introduced, but they will not still have major impact. All the major things they have been already introduced. I think it's more important to speak whether the government is going to continue to finance these programs, because as you know, Russia budget is being revised and is going to be decreased. So it's more important to continue doing this support. So in terms of forecasts, this forecast we have prepared early this year, and that was at that time, I would say, kind of conservative scenario. Currently in these conditions, I strongly believe that this is a kind of optimistic scenario. Now we will be, as PwC, launching new market overview and new forecast, but we believe that the market will stabilize at the level of 35 to 40% drop compared to previous year, and this may result of market new vehicles, new passenger vehicles market of about 1.5 million of units, which of course quite a significant drop. On the other hand, in 2009, we have seen a bigger drop of almost 50%, and as I said, situation could be even worse without the support from the government. In terms of the factors that will continue influencing the market, of course, geopolitical situation, and I clearly understand that making any forecast in current conditions is a very tricky thing. We still believe that it's important to do that because business needs to plan the development, and we are doing this, but always stating, of course, as a caveat that geopolitical situation will have a major impact on all the further development. And of course, ruble exchange rate, its stabilization will also be kind of a positive factor for customers, first of all, because clearly one of the key negative factors was the fact that on the one hand, customers experienced a decrease in the disposable income, but on the other hand, this I would say unstable situation had also a very important impact in terms of behavior of customers who were reluctant to spend lots of money on cars. This chart was, the idea was to show, I would say, that in terms of development situation of certain brands leaving Russian market, situation is, I would say that situation is not over. GM could be not the last one, but I would say it's very important to understand that almost all the OEMs are revising their strategy in Russia. So they are, adjusting, the plans, the investments. So some of the, further development of the market, we will see that most of OEMs are decreasing the model range. So they are limiting, the import of cars, and they are changing conditions under which work with the partners, and they're switching to other currencies. So they're trying to hedge, to adjust, the development, to better, withstand this situation, and that has an impact, of course, on all of you. And over here we can see that the companies which are closer to this left corner, they are, I would say, kind of worse positioned, to withstand these problems. In terms of long-term forecast, this forecast we have introduced, quite long time ago. We are not revising it until we, get more signals from the market that the situation is changing drastically, because we still believe that the market will restore. And as you can see, in previous years, the market restored almost in 2 years and and a half. and you know, it was growing from 1.4 million to 2.8, and that was quite a, you know, significant and very substantial growth. We believe that the market will not be able to demonstrate this growth this time, because problems are more fundamental, and you know, it looks like the situation is a bit different, because previously that crisis was less applicable to Russia. You know, it was more, you know, external, while currently we are experiencing certain, you know, internal problems. So we believe that the market will restore to peak of 2012 within 5 to 6 years, which you know, leads us, you know, to forecast of 2.8. I would say we are now, you know, targeting this by 2020, and afterwards, you know, we expect to see moderate growth. Of course, we see that the kind of downturns that we are not, you know, including over here, because all of them, these crises are unpredictable, and we believe that from fundamental perspective, Russian car market still has potential to further growth. We, you know, advise our clients, yeah, just, you know, to be more conservative and cautious in terms of the planning business here in Russia, but still consider this market as an important one. And I strongly believe that most of OEMs, most of the brands, they do so. So the market still is considered to be one of the most important ones. So that's it. I'm happy to answer questions if you have. So thank you. Questions later.
Thank you very much, Sergey. And there will be an opportunity to ask questions to all of the panel members at the end, after all of the presentations. But I suppose after the presentation there, the good news is that this year we are at the bottom. From then, it should be slight growth and more growth. Although if anyone can really forecast the automotive industry in Russia at the moment, it's very tough. And we also mentioned the importance of localization. Later on in the actual session, we will hear more details about localization as well. Next up is a gentleman that I've known for probably just under 20 years when I first met him, which of course meant that I must have been 10 years old then, and Roger was probably just 50 years old then. So I'd like to welcome to the podium Roger Rogers, the Executive Director of Material Planning and Logistics from FordSollers. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Everybody awake? I hope so. We're going to talk about something a little bit different today. We're going to give you a little bit of an introduction, and then we're going to talk about internal logistics and why it's so important here in Russia, and why I've spent the last 2.5 years trying to coach my teams into the best practices in this area. And why I see it's really, really important, because it drives the fundamentals of our external logistics businesses. So, as Louis said, I'm Roger Rogers. I'm the Executive Director of MP&L. It's a position I took up here 2.5 years ago now. I'm a 38-year veteran with Ford, so I've been around the block, as he said, a few times. I've done 3 or 4 foreign service assignments before in other countries. So for some reason they thought I might be a good fit to come to Russia. So we'll see what that looks like at the end of the presentation. I would like to say thanks, first of all. Let me start by saying, Louis, thank you again for inviting me. I didn't think you'd invite me back after last time. We had some interesting facility problems last time, which was fun for all of us. I'd like also to introduce you and say thanks to my colleague and my friend, Sergey. He's the Director of MP&L in FordSollers, and he's played a very big part in pulling the presentation together today. So, Sergey, thank you very much. 2.5 years and 7 major launches in 24 months is what we're trying to achieve. 7 major vehicle operation launches. It's a staggering total. It's something that we've never done before anywhere in the world, and we're doing it against the background of a joint venture relationship. Yeah? We're very lucky to have the partners we have in Sollers, and we have some, because we've got partners, there are strengths and weaknesses, and you have to work around them, and one of those areas is internal logistics, and I'll come on to that again in a minute. But that 2.5 years, those major launches, has given me another insight into this industry. It's probably not an insight that PwC could give you on numbers, but let me try and talk about people and processes and show you what we have to do to work here in Russia. I think you have to recognize as well that we're rapidly moving from what is an imported supply base to a localized supply base. When I first came here, we were at less than 25% local. On the latest numbers, we should be hitting 60% next year. It's a fantastic achievement by the team. Yeah, this doesn't happen overnight. MPNL plays its part, purchasing, engineering, the whole business. Yeah, but the Ford Sollers brand is being transformed very quickly, and you'll see all those new products coming to market. As I said, internal and external logistics. People tend to focus on the external. Yeah? As a group, we seem to want to put boundaries between the two. It's external or it's internal. It's parts or it's FCSD. Yeah? It isn't. It's one business. And what we do in internal logistics drives how we can run our external logistics, how efficient we're going to be. The problem we have is that we're working in complex situations. We love it, don't we? As logistics companies and people, we love this. There's a weather to be worried about. There's complexity. There's the high number of transport modes. You know, we're bringing sourcing from China and the Philippines. Everybody loves this great big morass of stuff. It's great to do. There's a lot of analysis you can do. But people forget to focus on internal logistics. How do you present that part to your customer? Yeah? And I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that today. If we look, sorry, is the microphone, can you hear me? Is the microphone working if I move away from here? Is that okay? Yeah? Oh, sorry, it's me now. Okay. External logistics. Clearly things like sourcing, transportation mode, maybe transit time. This isn't a complete list. Cube utilization, very big driver of cost. They're all things that help us to understand external logistics. But our market is down 50%. We're moving to a local supply base. We've got lower volumes at the moment, and you just heard they're not going to recover quickly. So how can we bridge this gap between internal and external? How can we use the focus on internal to help us drive down costs? This is my network today. You know, we bring material from India, from Thailand, from Mexico, from Brazil, from North America, from Spain, from the rest of Northern Europe, from Turkey. It's a real long, I run 60, 70-day pipelines. Yeah. And the problem I have is that every time something changes, there's a hiccup in that chain. It's like a butterfly on a pond. The ripples fly out everywhere. If I cut 10 units of production, I've got demurrage. If I add 10 units of production, I've got premium freight. So what we need to do is to put a stable base into our plants so that we can run stable production programs and not have to change because we can't manage it. And the problem I have is if you start by designing these external flows, all you're going to get is material pushed at your plants. External logistics and internal logistics clearly linked. Yeah? However,
It's those internal logistics, pull strategy. It's the synchronous material flow. It's the idea to get to a batch of one that really should be driving what we do in the plant. And so that when we move that through, when we engineer it, don't just hope it's going to work. When we engineer it back into our outbound network, the thing works seamlessly. It doesn't become disconnected. So what do? We call it back to basics. And in our world, we've got new people. We've got our colleagues, as I've mentioned, from Ford Sollers, from the Sollers team. We've got new processes. We're giving them all the Ford processes to work with. We've got new products, 7 major car launches in 24 months in 3 plants. And we've got new plants that didn't exist 2.5 years ago. 7 launches, 24 months, everything new. We need a basis with which to work. And I call it back to basics. And there are several elements here. Safety. Yeah? You cannot run a business where you're not looking at safety first. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. But I want to focus today on the following thought processes that set up these internal logistics processes. Yeah? Communication, I'm going to come back to that as well. But I must be able to get my team and my work partners all on the same page. We have to be doing this together, otherwise it won't work. Safety is our business. It's our business in logistics. You may not realize it sometimes, but if you looked in the external logistics world, you'd see truck driver hours, tachographs. You'd see 2 UV tests for equipment. But what tests do you think we put into our plants? What robustness is there for safety? We are the experts. We have to engineer safety into the process. Yeah? We cannot, we will not, and we should not compromise. I often hear, it's Russia when things go wrong, whether it's safety or anything else. It's not Russia. We need to teach. We need to help. We do not need to be an apologist and say, it's Russia, it doesn't work. Equally, I can't be an evangelist. I can't spend all my life preaching safety. But what I can do is engineer it into the process. And I can engineer in pedestrian safety. I can make my networks look forklift free. Very, very important to get low batch size, batch of 1. I don't want unit loads moving around the plant because those forklifts are going to hurt somebody at some point. We've got help from our corporate standards on safety, and there's country standards as well. So we have to work with all of those. We need to do our safety walks. It's part of the process. Personal protective equipment, we need to understand what it is we need to have to keep our people safe. Safety barriers, speed limits, but engineering safety is a key asset to what we're about to try and do. Standards. Do everything the same way each time and don't reinvent the wheel. We've set the standards in the first launch and we are just replicating it across each plant, across each car line, and we're doing the same thing each time. Everything we do has to be driven towards workstation readiness. That's where all of our work, whether it's external or internal, comes. It has to be, how do we replenish? Now our standard could be 1 hour, 2 hours. I don't know what yours are, but mine are 1 hour. So I'm looking at 1 hour replenishment standard. So I need to work back from that standard. Yeah? 6 Sigma. It's a methodology. You all know what it is, but I see it used every day in external logistics. I see analysis of transit time, analysis paralysis, I would say sometimes, about every leg of my transit from North America down to my plants. I can tell you by day how long it takes, what the variance, what the mean, what the mode is. But do we pay the same attention to our internal material flows from the warehouse to the point of fit? No, and we should do. Because that's where we're saving money, we're driving cost out, we're keeping it simple. A plan. You've got to have a plan, and you've got to have a plan for every part, and you've got to have a plan for every part at every workstation. Yeah? We use something called cycle line layout. We developed it more than 20 years ago. People forget. You know, we're trying to reinvent the wheel sometimes. How do we set this up? It's very simple. We do the things we used to do with pen and paper. We've got computers now, but we forget that you can take that, you can put it on a pen and paper, you can take it down to the light, and you can engage everybody in the process. And that's what we need to do. We need paper, we need hard copy and print. It's a living document, this plan, on the shop floor. You take it to the line, you visualize it. It's a part-by-part analysis, and you engage your partners, the production, the industrial engineers, the manufacturing engineers. So it's not logistics saying it has to work this way. This is us as a team saying this is the way it will work to better affect our external logistics operations. I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures here of some of the processes we use. One is, this is a pick to light button, yeah? And the next one is an iPad, which you might find a strange thing to see on the shop floor. But we use them as part of the processes that we use for line feeding, because not one solution fits all. And we've got a suite of solutions, and I say use the suite. There are times when I would want to use an auto-call mechanism to pull a whole range of parts to the point of fit. But there are times when it's actually better to have an operator with a call button, because he knows when he's about to run out of material. So there's a whole suite of things we can pick from. Kitting. It allows us to take material away from the line side. We go and kit these parts in an offline area, and we bring a kit box for the car to the line. Why? Because we want to make the production operator's job simple. That's our job in logistics. Whether you're in logistics external, whether you're in the internal stuff in the plant, the idea is we're a service industry. Make the production operator's job simple. Take the material away from the line side. Visualize what you're trying to do. Try and visualize this car being built. Yeah? Change happens, and we need a process to manage change as well. And launch, I can tell you from personal experience, is very difficult. You need extra checks on material control, engineering change, cycle checking. But if you've got a plan and if you've got a process, it will work, because it all fits into the standard. There's one way of doing it for us. Visualization, what does it do for us? Me, it drives safety. I talked to you about this early on, and I will make no apology for doing it again. We have to drive a safe operating system. Yeah? It'll drive reduction in material line side. It eliminates the hidden factory. You know, when you start walking around and open your eyes, you'll see people decanting, and you ask the question, why are you doing that? We don't need to do it. We can find another way. We can engineer it. And we can improve the transparency of our internal logistics routes, just as we improve the transparency of our external routes. Here, visual aids. Great way of just reminding people what they need to do. Floor marking. A great way of showing you that there's only a certain area that you can use to put parts on. Pick to light. Very good way of making sure you pick the right part, but only give the operator. Don't let him make a decision. Give him the part that he needs to take. And then communication. It's a word that really speaks to itself. But I can't do more than underline the importance of communication between the logistics teams, the plant production teams, industrial engineering, the manufacturing engineering teams, and the external logistics teams, because we only have one plan. If you become disconnected, yeah, that's when you end up with all this waste. And it's the waste that I don't want. I don't want parts standing still, and I don't want the waste. So that's why we've delivered, if you like, this package of communication around back to basics for everybody. We communicate our processes, we communicate our standards, and we do it the same way every time, and we can pick from a suite of systems. So I hope that's been useful to all of you today. It's something that we found very useful as we've gone through the process in the last 2.5 years, and clearly we can take any questions you have during the question and answer session. So with that, everybody, thank you very much for today.
But as Roger said, internal logistics is extremely important and very much linked to the external logistics as well. And I'm also about for Roger's passion for safety. It isn't just public relations speak or just to make full book, it's something that Roger is very passionate about. Next up, we're delighted and honoured to have a statement from Cherekaev, the Deputy Director of Trade Policy from the Analytical Centre for Foreign Trade from the Ministry of Trade. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, I represent Analytical Center at the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation. In my presentation, I would like to very shortly dwell on the foreign trade situation in the automotive industry first quarter 2015, and I'll tell a few words about the center I represent. From January to March 2015, the import of passenger cars dropped down to 97,000 units in Russia, which is 44% lower compared to the first quarter 2014. In absolute indicators, it was $1,573,000,000 US, which is 2.3 times lower compared to the previous year. And from $1,576,000,000 rubles, $1 million of vehicles were imported from foreign countries and a little bit less from CIS. The import of trucks dropped down to $187 million US from foreign countries. 3.6 times less of trucks were imported compared to the previous year. And from CIS countries, only 500 trucks were imported, which is 16% lower compared to 2015. As for the export of cars, the first quarter of 2015 showed for passenger cars $211.7 billion US exports, which is 30% lower compared to the first quarter 2014. Out of them, to CIS countries, $194 million US, and a bit less to the foreign countries. As for trucks, in the first quarter 2015, overall, $77.4 million US were exported, which is 14% lower than the first quarter of 2014. To foreign countries, out of them, $41 $5.7 million to CIS countries, $35.6 million. Next, I want to talk about the measures foreign trade that are being applied in the automotive industry. For the vehicles imported into Russia, the anti-dumping duties are being applied in terms of light commercial vehicles, amounting to 29.6%. This is for Germany, 21% for Italy, and 21% for Turkey. These duties have been introduced on the basis of the result of anti-dumping investigation of 2012-2013, and this measure, as of today, is being considered at the WTO. Depending on the results of this consideration, it may be cancelled. In terms of vehicles exported from Russia, a special protective measure is being used in Ukraine. The duty amounts to 2.15 4.2%, but this measure will be cancelled gradually. In Ukraine, there was an investigation carried out in terms of vehicles. It is not finished yet. The last hearings took place in May 2015. By the end of the year, probably, a new duty will be introduced in terms of passenger cars imported from Russia to Ukraine. Also, the automotive industry is one of the best subsidized industries in Russia. Very shortly, I can list the main documents on the basis of which different subsidies are envisaged for Russian automotive industry. Decree of the government of the Russian Federation dated March 2015, number 244. It envisages subsidizing of part of the expenses connected with the vehicles production within the framework of automotive. Also, a decree of January 2014, number 30, 31 and 32, that envisage subsidizing part of expenses for the production of vehicles by the facilities of automotive industry. And also a decree number 30 envisages subsidizing energy resources. Number 31, the decree number 31 is connected with the support of guarantees in terms of vehicles, and the decree number 32 is connected with the workstations and their maintenance at the automotive industry facilities. That's it about the industry situation, and now a few words about our analytical center. The analytical center was founded in February last year by the government of the Russian Federation, represented by the Ministry of Industry and Trade, the Russian Economic University named after Plekhanov, the state corporation called Rostechnology, and Gazprom Bank. The goal was the analytical support of the Ministry of Trade in terms of foreign trade on the one hand, and provision of adequate interaction between the business and the ministry, as one of the ministries responsible for the governmental policy in the sphere of foreign trade, in order to have a good dialogue between the business and the ministry, and developing mutually beneficial proposals that could be incorporated into the Russian laws and the laws of the customs union. As of now, the center carries out activity in three main areas. We support the export of the Russian manufacturers. Second, we support the national manufacturers at the domestic market, and we also follow up trade disputes within the framework of the European Commission and in the third countries. The center carries out analytical work for the Ministry of Trade in these three areas, including investigation about the situation of Russian companies in the third countries. We also take part in the analysis and preparation of comments to the documents connected with the mode of foreign trade regulation within the customs union and in the Russian Federation. We also provide consulting services, and these consulting services may be aimed to change the horizontal legislation in the sphere of foreign trade in order to resolve some systemic issues, but also we provide paid services connected with the provision of and securing of interests of some companies, in terms of support and adjustment of regulation systems, for example, customs regulation, tariff regulation. We take part in trade disputes and similar stuff. Thank you for your attention.
Mikhail, for giving us an overview of what you are doing and the situation on foreign trade to, from and in Russia. Next up, one of probably the most well-known figures in automotive and logistics in Russia. I'd like to welcome to the stage our good friend Wilhelmina Shavshina, the legal director and head of foreign trade regulatory practice at DLA Piper, Russia. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Dear Louis, thank you for your invitation and hope. A lot of news, but let me switch on Russian. Доброе утро еще.
Once again, good morning, everybody. I will try to be brief. And since our first session is dedicated to the automotive industry issues as well, I would like to touch upon some aspects connected with the companies working under the mode of industrial assembly, not only OEMs, but also manufacturers of automotive parts and components. And continuing the topic of the previous speaker who told that automotive industry is one of the best subsidized industries in Russia, I may say that it is true if we speak about the those who manufacture vehicles, but if we speak about suppliers, first and second tier suppliers, I wouldn't agree, because the conditions in which nowadays the suppliers, OEM suppliers, find themselves seems to me a bit more sad compared with the other manufacturers. Very briefly, what I would like to mention in this situation: localization requirements. You know that the companies that have entered the Russian market, on the one hand, they received certain preferences and agreed to very rigid conditions in terms of localization, some obligatory technological operations, and the situation in which the market found itself with the turbulent ruble had some negative impact on the industrial assembly. The government certainly pays a lot of attention to this situation, and I will tell you a little bit more about the initiatives that exist in this area, how business perceives these initiatives, and whether there are any other ways to implement their plans and intents in terms of expansion, or maybe business support in Russia as of today. This slide reminds us about the fact that the companies have to calculate the level of localization every year. And in the current situation, it is important to do in the test mode, maybe on a monthly or at least on a quarterly basis, because next year, 2015,
for many companies, 2015 will mean next stage of increasing their local content from 15% of the local content, which they reach without actually introducing the local content as a locally purchased and produced components. So basically, they were just they achieved this percentage just due to assembly operations and due to added value that they had in Russia. So this 15% of local content were easily reached. And as you can see on this slide, I tried to give you an example about the levels of localization when the producers will have to switch to 30% of local content, and some companies will have to move up from 15 to 45% of local content. So again, those companies who signed local content agreements or who signed other agreements with a certain exchange rate, or ruble to dollar or ruble to euro exchange rate. So these companies have been planning their business operations in Russia. They have been working in good faith, and they would have reached 45% in local content by 2015, but for a huge decline which happened during last summer. And of course, there are a number of practical issues which are related to reaching the required level of local content. So here I'm just trying to list a number of issues. A lot of these issues, of course, are not new. When a company tries to prove or verify its localization level, so they use a formula for production line assembly, which takes into account local content of the part only when this locally purchased part has changed. Only in this case, such a locally purchased part can be subtracted from the imported volume. So, of course, it is related to any OEMs. When, for instance, when the parts are brought by retailers or wholesalers and nothing is done with these parts, and these parts are just simply resold to the production facility or to an assembly line, then if we interpret the procedure on industrial assembly in a correct way, it means that such components, even though they were formerly purchased locally, they have to be included into the volume of imported parts. So here we run into a lot of formal difficulties trying to account for such parts. So when these parts are reflected in the imported volume, these companies have to have information on external operations or foreign trade operations, and it is not always possible. So how were these agreements structured? Well, there have been a number of cases when companies used a certain business logic to structure the agreement depending on the type of products that they make. So they went with a much more thorough detailization of the types of products that they are manufacturing. But as you can see on this slide, for instance, I'm giving you an example of interior parts. Here we're talking about door panels, tool desks and center consoles. All of these fall under one type of product, but if the company has split it into 3 types of products, then they have to submit their localization report on 3 types of products. So if it turns out that the company cannot really prove localization in one type of the product, then this risk is extrapolated over the entire agreement, over all types of the products manufactured. So here, of course, a company has to approach the structuring of this agreement in the most cautious way. And since the way the procedure is formulated, the company depends on the sale of their products, which is also a big concern when suppliers were getting the orders, and when they manufacture the products due to a number of reasons, sometimes they cannot really sell their products. And I can give you an example that even some of our clients encountered a lot of problems, and so you all know the closing down of GM production lines when the goods were manufactured but haven't been sold, and since they haven't been sold, they cannot really be accounted for in localization reports. And due to the nature of the procedure, the local content level is not reached. Therefore, the agreement is halted for the remainder of corporate projects. What's also important, it is very important to regulate import volumes. I talked to Alexei Kastum from Magna Group, and we saw when a company monitors these volumes on a monthly basis among the signatories of the agreement on industrial assembly. Well, basically there was a precedent when a company started working under the agreement end of autumn. This company imported a huge volume of spare parts, so they had no time to manufacture finished products, and when they started their reporting in May, they showed a negative local content or localization result. So basically the agreement was suspended. Of course, the situation has been resolved, but it wasn't easy to resolve this situation. So what sort of ways or instruments do we have in order to manage the problems and all the risks that I've mentioned? Well, first of all, when it comes to the economic situation, I have to tell you that a number of companies contacted the Ministry of Economic Development and the Ministry of Industry and Trade with a request to improve the calculation formula. So these requests were reviewed and paid attention to, but of course not to the extent that the business wanted the authorities to do so. And I have to tell you that the formula that the ministry has offered, of course I'm not going to go into the mathematics and economics. I have to say that the point of the economic logic, and to tell you the truth, my first degree is in technical science. I also studied different mathematics. So when I try to look at this formula from a mathematical background, I have to tell you that I really do not see clear logic behind this formula. We do talk to the developers of this formula, and I have to tell you that basically this formula has V divided by P, so everything that's within the brackets or parentheses, V is the overall, P is overall import, and this is the cost of realization. They introduced the coefficient K which is the change in the exchange rate. And this coefficient will allow car manufacturers preserving the basic terms and conditions. So basically, this multiplier is about 1.5, or this coefficient is 1.5. So according to the Ministry of Economic Development, this formula, if we reduce it, if the import indicator and the sales indicator, if they're proportionally reduced, it might mitigate this negative situation for the agreement signatories. But we did study it with our clients, and we saw that for the companies which will achieve 30% of local content in 2015, then we can say that this formula will add about 10%, but of course all of us understand that the devaluation is about 50%. So when we're talking to the developers of this formula, and when we're trying to understand the logic behind this, basically the developers of this formula tell us that they presume that suppliers for the OEMs, they've increased their sales prices. And again, I would actually put this question to voting. I don't know how many suppliers of spare parts are present in this auditorium, but basically I would like to ask you whether you increased your sales prices for the OEMs proportionally to the devaluation of the ruble. Unfortunately, I have no knowledge of such practices, and we do insist that this formula shouldn't be accepted. It should be modified, at least modified in the way as you can see on this slide. Again, this presentation will be distributed to all of you freely, so I will not go into it in too much detail, but I'm ready to discuss it afterwards with those of you who might be interested. So let me just skip through a couple of slides here, but what I wanted to emphasize, I just wanted to say that the automotive industry, even under current conditions, of course I'm talking about the Russian automotive industry, it still retains a certain degree of attractiveness. And Russia is probably second only to Germany when it comes to the volumes of cars sold. So I do believe that the OEMs will not stop entering the market. We see a lot of interested first and second tier suppliers from Turkey who are entering the Russian markets now. The implementation period for the agreements has mostly run out, but there are other ways to remain on the markets, to achieve market stability. First of all, companies have access to the so-called free economic zones or free customs zones. You can have access to recycling programs, and I have to tell you that the list of goods which could have been included into recycling list for the automotive industry choose to be only for 40 positions, but right now we're talking about 140 positions. So the business position, the position of the business is very proactive. The business is extremely open, and of course we can also underline effective cooperation with the holders of the agreement. And even if we have companies present here today who are not holders of such agreements, I would also offer you to consider free economic zones. So Kaliningrad is probably not of so much interest this to you due to the WTO obligations which come into force from the 1st of April 2016. It will not be a free economic zone anymore, but there is a free economic zone in Alabuga and Tatarstan, and FordSollers, I think, will also confirm how successfully you can build a competitive production facility in Alabuga. So right now I would like to announce something which is going to happen next year. As you know, the customs code for the Eurasian Economic Union is being developed. So this the draft of the code is ready. It is now undergoing the approval procedure in all of the member states of the Eurasian Economic Union, so I do believe it will come into force next year. It has a number of amendments and even a new chapter regarding the economic operator, and I think here we approached the practice of the European Union when logistics companies, transportation companies and customs representatives will also get access or will be able to get the status of authorized economic operator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wilhelmina. Highlighted a couple of very important points, the opportunities of localization, but also the challenges. And it also highlighted for me in a conversation with Roger from FordSollers, he was telling me that, you know, people he's hiring at FordSollers, young graduates, are not just from supply chain, but also mathematicians and physicists. And when you see the equations that they might have to look at to establish localization, you can see why that would be a requirement. Of course, I understood the equation immediately. You don't believe me. So now it's the time to take advantage of the great panel we have here, to ask some questions, to make some comments. You can use the application, the app, if you have registered for Automotive Logistics Live, to make some comments or to ask questions. I have access to it from the stage to ask the questions, but of course preference is given to those who ask questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand, wait for the microphone to come, firstly so we can hear you, and secondly so that it can be translated for those who need the translation. Your question or comment can be in Russian or English, whichever is easiest for you. So just very quickly, because we're already running over a little bit, are there any questions from the floor? Does anyone want to kick off with the first question? No? Okay. And just the usual warning, I have some questions myself, so don't think you're going to leave early for the coffee break if you don't ask questions. So I suppose the first question is to Mr. Cherekaev about supporting the automotive industry. Firstly, on exports, one of the opportunities for the automotive industry, even when the market is a little bit, tough in Russia, how are the exports going? You mentioned some of the numbers, but what can you do and what are you doing to encourage more exports from Russia?
Should I answer for the place?
Yes, please, yes.
As far as I know, there are no special projects to intensify exports of automobile production in Russia, but we have several new, instruments in this sphere. First, it's structures of Внешэкономбанк, which credit importers of goods and make insurance for export credit. It's Roseximbank and XCR. these two structures, they are aimed at intensifying exports not only of automobiles but of all other goods. Second, there are some plans mentioned by Rostech, state corporation, to intensify export of lorries, and there are some plans by VAZ factory to intensify exports of light vehicles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And similarly to Mr. Cherekaev, you know, we're seeing some people joining the market in Russia now, maybe particularly some of the Chinese car makers. So what are you doing to encourage new manufacturers to come into Russia?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm ready to answer this question.
Again, any questions from the audience?
Just a little bit about logistics. My question is for Roger. Just sort of like about internal logistics. I just wanted to look for Solar's approaches in terms of outsourcing, or is that in-house, for example, like JV or materials? Do you have on-site suppliers? Do you find, for example, logistics providers? How do you manage that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. At the moment, we're really adopting the process of using the JV experience. So we're leveraging the experience that Solars has here. We have a Solars workforce from Kazakhstan, and it's an experienced workforce in many areas. It's taking time to adapt to the Ford processes, but at the moment, most of our work is in-house. The equation differs slightly when we go to external logistics. We tend to employ the big partners. But one of the things we talked to Louis about in the pre-advert for this meeting is trying to work with those partners to do things somewhat differently. So to create more added value for them. And this will eventually come back to how we integrate internal and external logistics. We find we've got some really, really good partners. We're very fortunate. They're all working very hard on cost reduction at the moment, as you might imagine, so that we're all competitive in this business. Outsourcing, as we call it, does have its place. It's not on our agenda today, tomorrow, next week, but I would never say never. Because clearly one of the things that we're all struggling with our tier one suppliers that come in, can we make a business out of it with these lower volumes? And we've got to try and move forward to 2020 or something like that and say, yes, we're all going to recover. But in the meantime, how do we do it differently? And one of the things we're looking at is there a partner that could come and work with us on some intermediary basis to help in those areas? So it's on the agenda, but not immediately.
You mentioned how companies are struggling to localize based on the depreciation of the ruble, and maybe the government has an equation to try to compensate a little bit for that. But is there any leniency from the government in terms of the target dates to reach levels because of the crisis, because of the difficulties in reaching these localization targets?
Yeah, they're ready to hear us, and we're ready to hear business, but we don't fully understand their position, and as I said, their calculation does not suit for business needs, and but we hope that several amendments will be done, and not only with regard to this formula, but only we have as well other suggestions. And for instance, the concerns, as far as concerns exports, because currently, if the Russian local producer would like to export their final products, it's a question if it necessary usage, because into the agreements, they under the agreements terms, they should sell final products only for Russian purposes, for Russian OEMs, yes, not for export. But we try to coordinate with this issue with the ministries and to prove that for export purposes also need the purposes of the agreements, and we also try to support our local production.
Any questions?
So my question is for price of the cost for Mr. Sergey Litvinenko. So your diagram, your forecast for the long term up to 2020 looks like missing. So can you share with us what is your short-term forecast, let's say for springtime, if seasonal recovery will come? So what is your expectation there?
Thank you for the question. Well, as I already mentioned, our forecast for this year is a drop for the market for new car vehicles, for new passenger car vehicles of around 40%. Actually, it's 35. I would say more optimistic. In reality, we will see something closer to 40. Which corresponds, in total volume of a bit less, still around 1.5 million, but a bit less than 1.5 million. Well, for the next year, we expect that the forecast will highly depend on this overall macroeconomic situation and these geopolitical things. If the forecast of Russian government of modest growth of GDP of around 2% is achievable, then we can expect that the market will start growing, because clearly it will be kind of a low base for the market, and what is also important, that the market and customers are starting to receive positive information about prices and so on. And clearly there is a delayed demand, which will clearly support the market in the following years. The question is whether this delayed demand will have an influence in the next year or further years. I believe that the next year will be still quite difficult, as I said, and we can expect some modest growth. As you remember, one of the key factors also the fact that the peak, the maximum amount of new cars sold, we have seen in 2012. Considering the period of ownership of new cars, of cars here in Russia of about 4 to 5 years, it says that these customers who already possess those cars are likely to start changing those cars exactly in 2015, 16 and 17 years. So we believe that the market fundamentally has a potential to growth to the levels that we have seen previously. But of course, the demand is shifting, and that a result of drop in real disposable income of customers. So modest growth in 2016, and further we expect that if nothing really dramatical happens, we can see quite a substantial growth in 17 and 18. Substantial as a result also as a low base, but we expect that the delayed demand will have a major impact in those years. So, and of course, I also maybe wanted to add about this localization thing. Of course, so far the government announced that no plans have changed. So still the targets are set and need to be achieved. So if nothing changes, still companies, OEMs will increase localization. I'm not sure whether they can reach those levels that were set for them, but this also will have a positive impact on sales and prices that they can propose to customers. My concern is another question that doesn't relate maybe to your question directly, but this discussion about parallel import. And I do hope that this initiative, I will say truly, will not happen, because otherwise this might also influence these localization plans and all the market development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've reached the end of the session, but it was a very, very interesting session. And firstly, we started off with some projections and forecasts that obviously depend on a lot of geoeconomic and political issues, but a good collection of the forecast. Then we heard from a car maker from FordSollers about remembering the in-plant and internal logistics and how despite the complexity of logistics, sometimes the solutions can be found in going back to basics and looking at simpler solutions, not trying to complicate what's already complicated. It was fascinating to hear directly from the Ministry of Trade what they're doing, the new sector on Analytical Centre on helping to support the developing automotive industry, and as always, Shavshina gave us some honest and real figures and direction on localization in particular. So I'd like to thank the panel for a great start to the conference. Thank you. Please join us back at 11 o'clock for a session where we'll be looking at what the region of Kaluga are doing to support and encourage investment in Kaluga and to get some customs and world trade solutions. Join us for the coffee break hosted by our friend Jeff.